Welcome to the message recap, where we recap the message that we had the previous Sunday. We started a new series.
Yep.
Essentials.
It feels good to start a new series.
It does. It feels like we've been in Romans for 4 years.
Yeah.
It really does. But hey, that was also good, though.
It was.
Romans was a great series, and if you haven't seen it, feel free to click on those. But we started a new series, Essentials, and the first message was teaching.
Yep. Real creative again.
Yeah.
Seems to be our theme lately.
That seems actually more creative than... We're going more creative now.
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
So Essentials, new series. I said this really in the intro of the message, but we've heard a lot about essentials, especially in life lately, with essential business, essential employees, essential needs, whatever. And so you guys will remember this, but actually a year ago, back in like summer of 2020, we planned this series way back then, like kind of in the middle of COVID and closures and uncertainty about the future, and kind of came off a conversation we had for the church anyway of, who knows if we're going to be able to meet together again, and who knows what services, gatherings are going to look like. So what are the essentials that we need to keep doing as a church? And then we're just kind of taking that series and applying it to us personally in our relationship with God. So what are the non-negotiables to keep growing in our relationship with God? So we don't drift, so we don't, ignore things that are going to help us grow, and really just kind of defining those. So anyway, that's the series, and the first one is teaching. We need good, solid, biblical, on point, not foolish teaching.
Right.
Which can be hard to find.
Very hard to find. Maybe we can talk about that here in the recap. This is a good place for it, but what defines good teaching? And then if you're watching other pastors or churches, like, how do you know if they're good or not?
Right.
So,
what's the mark? If I'm watching Joel Osteen, am I like, yeah, this guy's on it? Well,
yeah.
Not
Listen,
necessarily.
I'll just say this: if there's a promise of a material blessing in this life, and it's attached to Christianity, I use that in quotations. That's a bad teacher.
Yep.
Don't watch that anymore. That's not true. That's not accurate. It's not what Jesus said, not what Paul said, not what the New Testament is about. So
it's called prosperity gospel, correct?
Yeah, that stuff is horrible. It's not good. It's false teaching. So, yeah. Absolutely. But anyway, I don't know what we want to talk about as far as like questions and more.
I got a feeling Kevin has some stuff. He's just
I've
got that
been
look on his
just
face.
waiting.
He's got that. He's not at the bit. I just see him just give me
waiting.
Give me an opening.
I just want to recap what you said. Essentials are, if you're to say in your own mind what essentials, we're talking about the essentials for Christian development, for spiritual growth. What are the essentials? Now, there are other things that are hobby things or things we can do that are not necessarily bad. They're just not essential. So if you're going to throw out things, if you don't have time to do all these things for God, let's make sure we as individuals are doing the essentials first. And then if you have time, do the other things. But if you want to stay alive spiritually, these essentials are so essential. Hey, they're essential.
Weird.
Yeah.
That actually brings up a good point. Someone messaged the church via our Facebook page after I assume they were here on Sunday, maybe not, maybe they watched online or something, but basically saying like, hey, there's a lot of little, details and stuff in the Bible that can help validate things, or you can even find God in the details and like, that sort of thing. There's nothing, I think the point of their message was basically there's nothing useless in the Bible. And like, okay, I totally agree with that. You're right. There are tons of details that we can study and learn. Everything in the Bible is equally inspired, equally true, but it's not equally essential, and it's not equally applicable. So I thought that just because that one person, if you're watching this video, you message that, totally agree, just it's not all essential.
It is absolutely true that the armies of Israel marched around Jericho 7 times. That is absolutely true. God wanted them to do that, and it was awesome. However, we don't need to study 7 trips around something as in some spiritual truth happening That's where we're getting up. Yeah, it's true. It's a great story. It's neat to see how God worked. But to pull that out as doing a teaching, which I've been around a long time. I've heard messages on surrounding something 7 times, and you can make some spiritual thing out of that. Doesn't mean it's true. There are a couple things you said in the message that I wish we could just go back and play it again. Did you hear that? Do it one more time. Right now.
We should have talked about this earlier. We could have put timestamps in.
Yeah.
At the message at 14:27.
Watch that 5 times.
Just so you know, Kevin, people don't use a rewind button anymore.
Oh, rewind. What do you do?
You scrub the timeline.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. That's all right. Anyway,
I just thought I'd just share that with you.
Okay. A couple of just major points. And when you went over the 3 types of teaching, it was great. I loved how you swung to the right and said to false teaching, or we need to unlearn things. This whole idea of teaching. What are we going to do with the false teaching we've heard in the past? We've all heard it, well-meaning people, but honestly, to be honest, they're deceived themselves. And we can go into a whole reason of the macro before the micro. If you don't understand the whole picture, you can't understand a piece of the picture unless you see how it fits in. Anyway, all kinds of rules that people break when they teach out of the Bible and come up with basically anything they want. I know that I could use the Bible to convince every one of us that that we should commit suicide. I actually could make a thing and probably get a lot of people to follow me. Doesn't mean it's true. So when we hear teachings over the years, and most of those are Christian cliches that just aren't true, those kind of things, hear people quote them all the time, that we have to unlearn those things. We have got to repent or turn from those things to believe good teaching, because you can't add good teaching to bad teaching and just keep going. Right. We need to unlearn certain things. We need to, like
a little bit of crap in the batch.
It's
still, you don't want to eat that.
No, right? It'll stink up the whole thing, So it'll ruin the good stuff. So there are a lot of things we need to unlearn. And defining good teaching versus bad teaching, we could go on a list of 25 things, but doesn't mean it makes sense. False teaching can make total sense.
Correct.
Sure.
Doesn't necessarily have to make sense. I mean, that's not one qualification. Is this good teaching because it makes sense? No. Is it good teaching because I like to listen to it or it hits my hot button? No. That's not a good one either. Good teaching is about understanding what Christianity is about. And from a Christian perspective, we don't use this term a lot, but I know some people are starting to use this term about the Christian Bible versus the whole Bible. Now we know the whole Bible. And to what you just said, the whole Bible is inspired of God. The whole Bible is true. We believe it is God's word, but it's not applicable to today. And we hear so many false teachings. So how do you identify a true teaching from a false teaching? Well, to identify, is it a Christian teaching or is it a Jewish teaching? Because some things that are a Jewish teaching can be applicable to Christianity, but not all of them are.
Yeah.
Not all of them are. It's just that simple. Walking around Jericho, for example, which we just talked about.
Importance of festivals and that has nothing to do with Christianity and being right with God through Jesus.
No. Now, with being essential teaching is our growing spiritually. Other stuff can be hobby. How big was the Ark of the Covenant? Obviously, it was very important because the dimensions were spelled out exactly.
Very specifically.
It was very important that the Ark of the Covenant was built exactly the way it was, had the gold on the top, cherubim, all of that stuff, exactly. But that is not applicable to us knowing God at all. And
It's super interesting information.
It's interesting, and that's where it stops. It is interesting. It is fascinating.
I think even you can appreciate, God when you read those things, or appreciate, lots of stuff in the Old Testament specifically, but essential. Essential is the key word.
Yes. I think of the tent of meetings or the tabernacle, the exact measurement and the building of the temple to the exact how clear God was and how it was to be built, how big everything was, what kind of furnishings were supposed to go in there. All that stuff is amazing to think. God had that much detail where God was at that time working with people in this broken, fallen world with his nation is all interesting. But when Jesus died, the curtain was ripped. No longer from that point on did any of the dimensions of the temple matter at all. Okay, it's over. Interesting for history. Doesn't matter for today. God doesn't live in a house. There's no such thing as Holy of Holies. It's just these things. Christian teaching is way simpler, in my opinion, than the whole Bible. The Old Testament stuff had a lot of very intricate things to it that you can research and even study if you want to for historical benefit only, not for spiritual growth. It just doesn't.
Yeah. I, in particular in the message, liked the reference. And I know we've heard the story a bunch of times. I don't know how many times you've actually talked about
Shared
it on
it,
stage.
yeah.
But with that lady calling the church.
Is that all?
It's heartbreaking. And anyone with eyes and ears could have seen it. It was breaking your heart on stage just telling that story.
Is that all? How far away from Christianity, how deceived do we have to be to respond that kind of way?
Yeah, that's not enough.
Is that all?
I think the way that lady was looking at things, we can all tend to go there today of, well, we want what's new, what miracles are happening, what's God doing in the world? Are you seeing angels? Is there gold dust? Is there, what kind of phenomenon's happening? I want to get into the cool stuff. And are people being slain in the spirit? Are people, this kind of stuff, which is fine, but it's not essential. That should be secondary or third or whatever. Again, the macro, Christianity is all about Jesus coming to this earth to restore a relationship with God that is humanly impossible without. Without Jesus, we can never be restored back to God. And I love how if that ever gets boring to us, if that, like, what could be a greater, what could be greater? There's nothing greater than that.
He healed my broken arm.
Wonderful. I'm happy for you. Okay, you're
probably going to be dead flesh in 50 years.
Everybody Jesus raised from the dead died again. So gave him a few years.
But again, we've had this discussion too. How angry would you be? You died and you're on your way there, and then he brings you back.
I'd be ticked.
Jesus, what the heck? What the heck, Jesus?
Thanks
now I'm going
a
to
lot.
run for my life the rest of my life too, because everybody's ticked at me.
The only difference is if that happened to you, you would live with an absolute anxious or
Drive.
a passion or a drive that this life is short. You need to know Jesus Christ. That that would compel you, knowing that once you've seen glory, to come back here, you would know absolutely this is short. I don't care if you live to be 101. It's very short, and we don't have much time to spread this message of Jesus Christ, because I can't imagine experiencing heaven and not giving everything you have to make sure everybody else will experience that for eternity. We're off subject, but yeah. What could be better? And I love how clear, and I got to be honest with you, man, it's bold. It's bold for you to say, we will not be teaching on this and that and that and that.
Yeah.
Why? It's not essential. We have 52 weeks a year. That's not very many. 52 opportunities to share a teaching about Christianity and God's love for us and what he's done for us. We're not going to waste one of those 52
Talking about angels.
on something that's irrelevant to our spiritual growth and knowing and being closer to God.
Yep.
Something that's not applicable.
It's just not.
Essential.
It's not essential.
If everybody could leave with one thing from watching that message, it was only a couple sentences, but it was basically, you guys will know, it's the circle. I just repackage it again, because again, we kind of talk about the same things over and over. But if the teaching doesn't lead to putting your faith in Jesus to be made right with God, salvation, it's not essential. If the teaching doesn't draw us to enjoy a relationship with God because of Jesus, it's not essential. If the teaching doesn't compel us to live differently because of our relationship with God, made possible through Jesus. It's not essential. The teaching doesn't compel us to want others to know about being made right with God and life change. Then it's not essential.
Yep.
If it doesn't fall into one of those four things, it can be cool information. It can be historically interesting. We can appreciate the way God dealt with people in the Old Testament. We can maybe even learn some, do some character studies, or there's some stuff but it is not essential. No. It's not what we need to grow in our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. You look at all the letters in the New Testament, from Paul, from Peter, from Luke, all those different things. How many times did they talk about cubits and angels? And I mean, other than John's Revelation, that's a weird letter in and of itself, but that
Your
stuff
favorite to
just
talk about.
does not show up.
Right.
The only place that even hints towards that is in Hebrews, where the writer just basically says, oh yeah, all this stuff is obsolete. Don't worry about it anymore. So come on. Yeah. It's so clear. If Christians needed that stuff to grow in their relationship with God, it would be in the New Testament letters to Christians.
Yep.
But it's not. And Paul is pretty clear about don't get caught up into that stuff.
Even in the book of Acts, where we can actually see a narrative of what the early church was doing.
They had one message.
Their message, I know. Their message, wherever they went, was pretty much the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Their message was, Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. Put your faith in him. That was the message.
You know what?
From town to town.
It seemed to work pretty well for them.
Yeah.
Christianity seemed to grow anyway. I don't know. I could be reading into it or something. So
I think one of the hard things is that, as we grow up in the church, there's just certain things that we're taught that aren't biblically accurate, and we claim them as our truths, and we start sharing that with other people, and it just it's a horrible vicious cycle. And we don't realize that it's not true, and we're causing more harm sometimes than good. And if we don't even know what we're telling is not accurate, that's hard too.
Yep.
And so I think
which is why kids' church is so important.
I know. I know.
Give them a good, solid, true foundation so that when other stuff comes up, oh no, I don't worry
That
about
doesn't
that.
sound right. Oh.
And we have
because it's
Awanas
not.
on Wednesday nights.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Awana on Wednesday nights?
Yeah. I want to go to Awana.
Everybody says Awanas, and it just sticks. Awana.
Oh, wow.
And then she goes, and then I go.
And then I go.
And then they go.
People. I love the message on Sunday. I wish we could just watch it until we get it, till we understand. I say this a lot.
You do.
But really, to just get it and not be fooled by false teaching, because it's what we want to hear.
Don't you feel like as a teacher, speaker, whatever, you give messages to, I feel so good. I'm so glad that Paul and Peter wrote in their letters, hey, I know this is just a reminder. That gives me such a get out of jail free card anytime somebody's I heard that before. Yeah. And your point is
They were reminding them then.
Is it not true?
Yeah.
Oh, is it still applicable? Oh, okay. Well, good.
I don't want to give away next week, but one of the things I think why we get into all these different teachings is because I think it is pastors or speakers, teachers, they feel this responsibility to make it something deeper, something new, something more exciting.
More exciting, interesting.
Because otherwise people just, I heard that before, and they leave. Oh, they come. We've talked about this so long. So many people come to church for 2 years and then they drift away. And why? It's all cool and exciting at first, but after, I've heard that before. They're missing the next part of this Christian thing.
You're missing the other 3 steps.
Yeah, they're missing those other things. But I really do feel like there's this pressure on speakers, especially pastors of a church, not evangelists so much, but to give something fresh, something new, something exciting, something. Whenever a speaker prefaces what they're going to say by, I got a special revelation from God, or I spent 3 days fasting and
Red
praying,
flags.
and God revealed a secret to me. Whenever I hear that, I thought, the next stuff coming out is absolute BS. It's just going to be made up. It's going to be made up. because there are none of those things in Christianity.
All the
There's just not.
mysteries were revealed
Yeah.
in Jesus Christ. That's
Yeah, or it's so simple. We feel like we have to complicate it somehow. It's just too simple. They wouldn't pay me to do this. It's so simple, you know?
Right. Well, I already got that out. Now, what else am I going to talk about for the
Yeah.
other 51 weeks in the year?
Or the people
the
that
same thing.
The
the
same
people that
thing.
come just for Christmas. Well, I've heard that one before. Well, yeah,
Well,
because
yeah, no,
it's
duh.
the same story.
You know, that
They-
darn Christmas story
maybe
hasn't
come a
changed
different-
in over 2,000
Maybe come
years.
next week when we
Come
have
the
a
week before, after Christmas, and you might hear something
just slightly
a couple
different
degrees off.
Yeah.
Yeah, a fresh perspective of the same things, a different angle, a different entry point of the same things is what you work so hard on.
Yeah.
Because you can't change the truth, and the truth is really simple. Very simple.
It's pretty easy stuff. So
Yep.
Yeah. Even Ross.
even Ross loves it.
He thinks it's so easy. Yeah. Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
easy. All right.
Hey, stay over there. You get a trip. Stay there.
We better wrap this up.
Yeah, we better before things get broken here. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week for the message